Welcome back to Southwest Yard and Garden. I'm Curtis Smith. Today we're in the Pinon juniper forest at a residence. And in a situation like this, it's very important to consider the fire potential in this forest, because here in the Southwest, forest fires do happen. And we want to design our landscapes in a manner that prevent forest fire. Now, we've already been in this landscape talking to Willie West, talking about the irrigation system, but today really we want to ask you what you've done to design to reduce the fire potential in this landscape.
Curtis, one of the things we did, especially along this end of the house over here, is as you can see we have irrigated plant material. So it's less likely to combust, as well as a gravel ground cover. So there is nothing for the embers to land on and ignite. Completely around the house itself is all irrigated. There again, keeping the moisture content in the plants high so we don't have to worry about it so much. Over away from us on this side of the house, in the open areas, we went through and eliminated a lot of the trees up near the house so that the fire line cannot get here. Plus keeping the embers further away from the house just so nothing will land on it.
Looks like it's well done. It's still pretty. You're still living in the forest. You haven't lost that, but you've got a beautiful landscape and fire safety to go with it.
That's correct.
We're here at a residence in a forested area with Bob Cain, Extension Forest Specialist, who's going to give us some guidelines about landscaping in these fire-prone forested areas. Bob, can you tell us ways to landscape so that our landscape actually protects our home from the forest fires, which are so common here in the Southwest?
Yeah, and I'm glad you picked this property because this one shows a lot of good examples of what we call defensible space. And defensible space is something to keep in mind when you're building a home or living in the woodlands. Pinon juniper isn't a real tall forest, but it's a very flammable forest. And the vegetation around a home is the fuel for the fire. A lot of people who live in the woods are afraid to cut their trees down. They don't want to lose that sense of having a lot of greenery, a lot of landscape, a lot of that natural environment around them. This is a good example of a home where there's some real nice landscaping. You're still in the woodlands, but we've changed the landscape from a very flammable western conifer type landscape of pinon and juniper to a less flammable moisture landscape with lawns, with deciduous trees, with more succulent plants that will slow down the spread of a fire if something like that was coming here. We've also reduced the density of the vegetation over 100 feet on this side of the house to the natural woodlands, which will be a tremendous asset in slowing the spread of that fire. Now, this house is actually a real good example of some things that were done to help protect the house. The siding of the house is stuccoed. There was a wood siding on this that was covered up. Non-flammable materials obviously are what you want to go with. So if you can use something that's stone or brick or something that's non-flammable, that would be excellent. When people build decks like this one, and again, this is a minor example of this, but decks overhang. A lot of times people build decks over canyons or places where if there were a fire, flying embers could get underneath the deck, and that's a very quick fire source to burn up the home. So areas underneath decks should be blocked off, so if flying embers were coming in, they wouldn't get underneath there and be able to start a fire. The roof material is another thing. On this house we have an asphalt roof, which is sort of in the middle as far as it's not real flammable, but embers could get started up on an asphalt roof. Ideally, a tile roof or a metal roof would be much more repellent to fire getting started. But this is certainly much better than a flammable roof like a wood shake roof, which in many areas has been banned because of the potential fire danger on those homes. When we go around the back of this house, we'll see some spaces in where the eave comes into the side of the house, where sometimes there will be gaps where, again, flying embers could actually get underneath the roof and start a roof fire, and those things need to be checked for and sealed off. Right over here is the area I was talking about where a woodpecker's been working on the stucco, and you can see it's created a gap that if there were flying embers, it's possible something could lodge in there and actually start the roof on fire. So you need to inspect around where the eave comes into the wall. That's a likely place to have problems. And even on a new home like this, you want to be aware of what's going on up there.
So what can you do with this problem?
Well, I would re-stucco that, and I'd probably, since there's a woodpecker who likes this area, cover that up with hardware cloth until the bird starts leaving it alone. But that is a real problem when you're living in the woods.
George Duda, urban forester with the New Mexico State Forestry Division, is going to give us some tips on what we can do to the forest around a residential area in forested areas so we can reduce the fire potential. What can we do here, George?
Well, this forest has too many trees. The fuel loading in this area is in favor of the fire. we want to switch that in our favor to protect ourselves. So basically, we can come in here and thin these trees and get them widely spaced to break the continuum of fuel so that fire behaves in our favor and we can defend ourselves. We have some specimens out here, a pinyon juniper. There's some obvious choices here. You have a large pinyon back there, a large one here. Save those and begin thinning out and spreading out these trees and cutting them and removing them.
So should you go to a situation where you've got a juniper here, a pinyon here, a pinyon here, so one tree scattered up from all the other trees?
They shouldn't be anywhere near each other. They should be several feet apart, maybe 15, 20 feet or more apart. We don't want the crowns touching together because here again, that continuum of fuel is what the fire wants. Mm-hmm. We want to starve that fire and to protect our homes.
How about if someone wanted a grouping, though, of trees? You've got a little clump of trees. Can you have the clump and then the bare space around that?
You can have a bare space around, establish a small meadow and a clump of trees. That's a very good idea. You can do that also.
There's not a lot of vegetation visible here under the trees, so pruning up is going to remove any ground fire from the chance to get into the ground. But I notice there are some things here, and things like the cactus, which are not very flammable to begin with.
Mm-hmm. We want to break that continuum again, and if we do have some fire on the ground, prune these trees up, and the term is ladder fuels that can carry the flame into the tree. Mm-hmm. If we can remove that dead material and a few live branches also that might catch fire from the ground, that would help us a great deal. But thinning is the key word. There are too many trees here. It's in favor of the fire. We want to switch that fire behavior into our favor and to make it behave in a way we can control it.
And as we thin, we're going to see more vegetation coming in, so we have to consider that fact that as we thin, the more light reaches the soil surface, we'll have more grasses and things coming in.
More grasses and more flowers, more cactus perhaps, and it adds diversity to the forest and helps make the forest become more diverse, both in plants and animals.
But it does increase that ladder fuel, so as we trim up, we need to consider that things will begin growing, mm-hmm. so we have to consider that as well.
It's a continuing effort. It is a very valuable one.
So it's not done one time, you do it all the time.
All the time.
What do you do with all the wood that you've cut?
Well, you can chip it, you can haul it off to the local transfer station. There's a lot of firewood out here that can be used in your fireplace, but get it out of the area and dispose of it.
Okay, is there a concern with insects when you do cut this wood?
That's possible. There's always a concern with insects. When you cut fresh wood, there's insects kind of home into that, and you could get a buildup of insects. So the best bet is to just take it out of the area as best you can.